Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we're going to look at the Week 5 matchup between Michigan and Washington. Now, this is my favorite matchup of the week. I think it has the potential to be the best game on the week, and I feel like it's going underlooked a little bit simply because nobody really views either of these teams as playoff bound or championship contenders. And you would be correct. Neither are, if we're being real here. So, but I think we have like one of the most common fallacies that casual players look at. And that's oh, Michigan's ranked 11th. Washington's not ranked. Why is Washington minus 2.5-point favorites? Like, this is just like common. I know we're in an era where it's less common than it might have been 5 years ago. But if you go to the bar, minimum 50% of people are going to have this viewpoint, and it's archaic, it's outdated, it's asinine. But anyway, we're going to dive into it. So on early downs, Michigan has been truly abysmal when it comes offensively, and that's mainly because nobody on that team knows how to complete a forward pass. None of them. They might just put Jim Harbaugh out there, they might need to bring Jim Harbaugh back to complete a forward pass. But just awful. 127th out of 134 teams is unacceptable for a program of that caliber. Now, 41st in rushing, that's not shocking. That's what their whole identity this year is built around. That's how they completely dominated USC. So none of this is shocking. But when we look at Washington on their side, 10th overall in early downs EPA, 31st in rush EPA, so solid enough. And the competition they played, I feel like, has been decent for what it's worth, and that those numbers are not completely inflated, right? And these numbers for the early down, remember, are versus only FBS opponents, whereas the advanced statistic metrics are going to be against every opponent on their schedule, but it does filter out garbage time, so you kind of have a balance there. Now, when we go to the offensive side of the ball for Washington, they're just as good as the defense, when it comes to early down success rate. This is not shocking, being that Jed Fish was brought in, and then they have Will Rogers, who is, obviously a long-standing quarterback from Mississippi State who played in, Mike Leach's system. May he rest in peace. So they're good. They're good at getting ahead of the chains. That's what they're built around, right? And, Michigan, the identity of their team is their defense and their ability to control the ball, right? So they've been very good from that standpoint. Now, when we look at it from an advanced statistics standpoint, there's going to be a couple of things that stand out for me. Now, Washington, as you can see, very good efficiency, and very good at limiting explosiveness. That's going to come a lot based off their secondary, who is extremely good against the pass. Now, from a rushing side of the ball, they are average, 69th and 79th, respectively, in efficiency and explosiveness allowed. But the thing is, Michigan is not elite. This is not the Michigan of last year, obviously. Nobody expected that. I mean, I don't think anybody should have. If they did, they're obviously Michigan alum or they're misguided. And their rankings are solid. They're not elite by any means or even super above average, 51st, 49th in stuff rate, 60th in explosiveness, 54th in efficiency. But again, here's the thing. If they're forced to throw the ball, which I feel like it's going to be like a wash, right? I feel like Michigan's going to have success on early downs probably about half the time. The offense, if they can run it, they'll have success. If they cannot run the ball successfully on first and second down, this is going to be a long-ass game for them because this offense is going to be struggling. When we come to the Washington offensive side of the ball, again, they're built around efficiency and not explosiveness. And the one you kind of wish they were a little more explosive because Michigan has a weakness there. I don't know if this team is going to have the capability to take advantage of that, but we will see. The offensive line is very good. Not a lot of negative plays, 10.4% stuff rate. Offensive line yards solid. but they're also not explosive from a rushing standpoint. So this is the type of team. Even though you're sitting there, and you're like, okay, well, they're not like a plotter Minnesota type team. No, they are not. They are a team that will throw the ball, and they're not trying to chunk it up and get 25-yard plays. They're just trying to get 5 or 6 yards at a time and just keep it moving. And one thing that is worrisome is last week they played Rutgers, 7 opportunities inside the opponent's 40. They came away with 10 points. They will have to do better at that. And I think at home they should do better than that. Looking at Michigan, they do have a couple of – it's going to be strengths on strengths, like I said. Defensive back habits, very good. 12th overall, 9.2%. The rushing predicted points per attempt efficiency is very good. But their passing is going to be – this is going to be like where they win or lose the game, right? 50th and efficiency and 112th and explosiveness. So there's going to be room for there's going to be a small margin of error, for Michigan if they want to compete and win this game. So one thing I want to look at is the game that is going to be most analyzed when it comes to what this looks like is going to be when they played USC, right? So USC, as you can see from an advanced statistics side, they're infinitely worse against the rush, and they allow a ton of explosive plays. Now, I know you're sitting here and you're like, well, Andrew, that's obviously guided by the awful game they had against Michigan, and you're 100% correct. But they've also played 4 other games, so we gotta somewhere we gotta draw the line, right? So when you look here, this is what they want to do, right? They couldn't do it against Texas, obviously, because Texas is an elite team. And they struggled against Minnesota to do it also. 3.6 yards per attempt. Southern California was likened to that of Arkansas State, where they averaged 6 yards per attempt, right? Now, what worries me from the Michigan side of the ball here is they cannot get down against a team like Washington, who does not, they're not going to have 3 and outs. They're going to have the ball and have opportunities, in your side of the field. So Michigan, when I look at what they're going through here, obviously the game against Texas they were supposed to lose and they got dominated. They played really well against Southern California, and they played really well against Minnesota, even though they let them back in the game. They were never really in jeopardy of losing that game, but to let them back into it and make it infinitely closer than it was is kind of concerning. And then, to have this 3-game stretch, not really impressed with. They beat Arkansas State by 10, USC by 3, Southern California, Minnesota by 3. It makes me think that Washington here is set up for just a big game. It makes me view it through the lens that they're just going to dominate in this game. And they arguably should have beat Rutgers last week. I've already touched on that in a previous episode, in the Rutgers episode. And they've played infinitely better than you would have thought coming into the season without Michael Penix and losing all of their receivers and everything like that. And I think the line has not moved at 2.5. It has perpetually been 2.5 all week. I think people are afraid to move it or touch it one way or the other, based off what action they would see. So I think they're just going to leave it at 2.5. I'm going to lean into the stylistic advantages here for Washington, along with the trend metrics that we're tracking on the early down success. And I have them minus 2.5. I'm going to be happy to lay that. I think there's the potential that the game could get out of hand and it's not going to even be close. That potential exists, and I think that outcome exists only on the Washington side. I do not think that Michigan will be able to have that sort of game, right? So that's pretty much the analysis here. I will be having Washington minus 2.5. That's going to be it for this video. slash episode. If you enjoy the content, please like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends, your family about it. Someone who would be interested in it. This is very small channel starting out, but we've got some steam, hilariously enough, building over the last couple weeks, and we're gonna keep going with that. So, as always, thank you again for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.